G'day YouTube, Warbles not a lot here. There we see the Mark-9 SunFoil on the roof of my car. It's a 30 watt gallium arsenide unit. And here we see the Mark-9 70 watt silicon panel on the roof of my daughter's RAV4. So now Ellie, the little RAV4, now has 4 solar panels. 3 tiny weeny little ones and 1 grunty big one. From standing in front of the car at eye level, you don't see too much of it. Stand up a bit closer and yeah, you can see it's a solar panel. And from the back you can see it hiding underneath the roof rack, showing off its drainage holes. The better to remove the hot air when it's stationary and to try to pneumatically streamline the flatness of its trailing edge, as explained at length in the previous video. So now she needs to take herself and her car down to her brother's workshop, Glenninnis Auto Electrics and Air Conditioning, wherein at, for his part of the Christmas present, my son will provide her with one of these solar battery charge controllers and fit it and wire it up to her battery with an inline fuse to the value of 10 amps in the wire between the charge controller and the battery, so that if anything happens to any of the wiring, the fuse blows and you don't wreck the battery while melting the wires while setting fire to the car or doing anything tragic like that. And a lot of people might say, well, what would be the point of that? Why would you want to have a solar panel on a normal car to charge its battery? And the answer is that normal cars can normally only charge their battery by burning fuel to make the torque, to spin the crankshaft, to turn a pulley, to run a belt through a step-up ratio, to spin that alternator fast enough to make sufficient electricity to recharge the battery. And as the battery's voltage rises, so it accepts ever less current from the alternator. So it can take 500 or 1,000 kilometres of normally driving the car after it's been jump started from having a flat battery before this alternator is capable of finally fully charging the car battery. So this 30 watt gallium arsenide panel, even under a fairly leaden sky, was still charging my battery, which after 20 kilometres and 3 engine starts requires charging. The car has been switched off. I showed you the battery charge controller. It's charging under the clouds. So when I come to restart the engine and drive away from here, I'm going to have pretty close to a fully charged battery. There it is, still charging. And if I turn the key on, we're showing 13.3 volts. 13.2 as the radio comes on. Now 13.2 volts is officially a fully charged battery, but that charge controller is going to run my battery all the way up to 14.3, perhaps 14.5, before it decides the battery is full. So when I start the engine, that battery is going to show its fully charged voltage state to the alternator, and the alternator's regulator is going to say, you're full. I have nothing to do here except function as a turnaround pulley for the power steering pump. And then all the way home until sundown, or if it really starts raining hard, I'm going to be running my ignition and my radio pretty much on solar power, because a couple of amps will do that. Of course, my daughter She goes camping and she has a mobile phone and she has a laptop. And she sometimes has quite a high electrical demand when the engine is switched off, so therefore she has a 70-watt SunFoil with which to save fuel. And nobody can really say for certain how much fuel it's going to save, but it will save some fuel. And I suspect that we will find out on the grounds that the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. And just as I have a logbook for my car and chainsaw and brush cutter, since she bought this car 3 years ago, she's actually logged all the fuel that's gone into it and all the services and all the work done and all the oil changes, and I figure she will be able to notice the difference in her logbook when she connects this thing up, or her brother does it for her, and she starts running her battery on sunlight instead of on fuel. So we come to the inevitable perhaps question of, what does it cost to do this to your vehicle? Well, we'll forget about the 30-watt gallium arsenide panel. I'm suggesting that most spark ignition vehicles, a 70-watt panel is a good idea. I got this one mates rates off my son for about $140. I think they're $170 retail. The battery charge controller is a $55 unit. I don't know what the wiring itself costs per meter. I don't know what the fuse holder costs. I don't know what the 10 amp fuse costs. I do know that just for the experimental nature of it, when this panel was being wired up onto my car, my mother paid the fee to my son at commercial standard rates, just so that I could find out what it costs. To put the wires in between the battery, the charge controller and my panel, he charged $198. It is a reasonably big size job. So the wiring is going to cost more than the solar panel. I think you're looking at $410 if you don't charge anything for my labour in making the feet and drilling the panel and converting it into an invisibly, pneumatically, barometrically streamlined stealth aerofoil. In order to be as close to being aerodynamically drag neutral as possible. And by the serendipity of the synchronicity of the coincidence, before these roof racks were fitted, she drove 19,827 kilometres going clockwise around Australia, with a central trip into Wolf's Creek meteor crater and another one into Uluru, and she logged all of her fuel burn figures before the roof racks went on. They've been on there for several months, so we know what the car's fuel burn is without roof racks, with roof racks, and now we'll see what the car's fuel burn is like with a SunFoil in front of the roof racks. The experiments just never end. Warple's on a lot to YouTube. Ciao.